All right, so for our wireframe exercise this week, we're going to explore idea generation in a usability point of view rather than, does it look pretty? What color is it? How are the typefaces? Those are sort of off to the side for this. For this, we're just thinking, how does it work? How does it navigate? And how does it flow? Can the viewer to your web page navigate easily, and does things make sense? So you can, for this, use just paper and pencil and sketch it out. So for wireframing, it's typically referred to as hi-fi, lo-fi, just like, music. So the hi-fi is going to be our Illustrator, Photoshop, and our onlines. And our lo-fi is just going to be sketches or post-it notes, something to that extent. So you can just sketch your wireframes and just think of it as a gesture drawing if you've had a drawing class. Just loose, rough, and it does everything connect to each other. I have an Illustrator template and I have a Photoshop template. So whichever one of those you're comfortable with, you may build your pages on those. There are also online sites, and they're in the actual class lecture notes for this, but Balsamic's good. It's a 30-day free trial, and there are others in that slideshow, so you can build them on that also. Those are also sort of seen as rapid prototyping, which is sort of the next stage, but it's nice because you can see it out on the screen just like in Illustrator and Photoshop. You can wireframe any site or one that you're interested in making, or you can work with the Project 3 and sort of lay out your thoughts for that so you can see how it flows and how is it for the usability point of view. How do they see the landing page? How does the nav work? How does it flow? Where are the buttons? Where are the links? Where's the social media going? Do you have video embedded, etc.? What, multimedia experiences are there, if any? This is the skeleton. This is our framework, and then we're going to build, so to speak, the meat and potatoes around it. So we're not getting bogged down by the details. We're just thinking of it as the bare bones minimum. The Photoshop grid, when you open it, looks like this. And the Illustrator, unzip it. And when I open it, you can see we have all sorts of options. So there's 12 columns, 16 columns, and then 24 columns. So obviously, the higher the column number, the more detail you're going to have. So if you're someone who really is specific and likes a lot of, minuscule detail, you'll probably be up towards the 24. This one, the Photoshop one, set up more towards the 12. So if you just want the 12 experience, open that one. And that way you can see what each of these look like. They're very similar. They're based upon the same premise. I'm going to reset the page. So for this, Photoshop, it's just going to be like a copy and paste. I'll demo it in Illustrator just so that, you have one version of it. For this, I'm going to lock layer 1 and I'm going to work on top of it. When you're designing photo boxes or something that has an image on it, it's typically viewed as a box with an X through it. So that shows that there will be content there. It's just not there yet. Because remember, it's the skeleton. We're not going to get bogged down into the details of it. And I am going to group this. And I tend to work with this shape building off to the side so that whenever I want it, I can just, if you're on a Mac, Option, duplicate it. If you're on a PC, Alt, duplicate it. And I'll do that again. Option or Alt, depending on which platform, you're going to see 2 arrows when I hold that down, and it's going to be able to be duplicated. E, that's your free transform tool. E is going to allow you to rotate, resize, rescale, etc. So if I was going to make a banner that's going to be on all of my pages, it would all have the same positioning and it would be right there. If we are having text, same dealio. Text is usually done one of 2 ways. It is sometimes just a nice gray box. So let's go ahead and get a nice gray, enough to give contrast, but not enough that it's too dark. That actually looks pretty decent. So if we were going to have our main header story here, ease our free transform, work within those columns because columns and guides are your friend. And so maybe that's headline 1, so that's our H1, and then this is our body copy. But then maybe to get people to it, it's going to have a photo next to it also. So maybe it's going to be a really sort of news style website. That way you can sort of see how the flow works before you're actually in it. Another option is the Lorem Ipsum text. And let me go ahead and show you how you can generate it. If you're in InDesign, and I think the new Illustrator has an option that you can turn on the filler text. I like a little bit more control. So I like to go to Lorem Ipsum, and it's usually this first one. It's the Ipsum generator, and there are Cupcakes and Zombie and Walking Dead, etc. Ipsum generators, Pride and Prejudice. I just go for the normal, plain old plain one. You can say however many paragraphs you want. You can tell it to start with that Lorem Ipsum, and however many you wish, go ahead and generate it, and then just copy and paste it. So I'm going to copy. And if this had been option 2, so I'm going to build the same thing. Let's mix it up because we want to keep it fresh. So I'm going to put it over here. The photo is going to be over here. But maybe I want to show some of that filler text. I'm going to make my text box. And in this case, I am going to draw it in place. Oops. And I'll fix that in a second. Paste. I'm going to get rid of that extra bit because I like mine to start right at the top and get it all nice, neat, and lined up. There we go. So now we can sort of see a mock-up where we're not worrying necessarily about the content. I am not changing the typeface either because that's irrelevant at this stage, but I do want to be able to sort of see what it would look like, and I'm just going to hide the guides. How would it flow if the text was actually in here? So what you're going to be doing is 3, and I'm going to loosely call it mock-up pages, the skeletal framework for whatever website it is. You know, you should have, at least in the class notes, a comment as to which site you're doing, or if it's just a warm-up for your project 3. But think about what's your H1, what's your paragraphs, what's your image, maybe this one's going to be a video, and build it for all 3 of them and see how they interact with each other. In Illustrator, you can just make separate artboards. In Photoshop, you would need 3 separate files. If you are rusty on Illustrator, it's File, Document Setup. Make sure you click on Edit Artboards, and I'm just going to zoom out with Command negative or Apple negative if you're on a Mac. And then you can just create more artboards off to the side or under it, or however you wish to flow with it. Maybe for this, it makes sense to put them under. So I'm going to make another one. There we go. And there are our columns and lineups. So we could have all 3 on one document. And you have to escape to head out of there. By the way, I always forget to say that stage. But you can have all 3, so you can sort of scroll down and see the moving parts all in one section. In Photoshop, just do a save as and make it, you know, just tab them over. And if you're using pencil and paper, just go ahead and photograph that when you're done, and then you can put them in a folder and zip it and put that in for your upload. So you can use paper, you can use Photoshop, you can use Illustrator. All right, so if you're going to use the Balsamic, go ahead and load it. I do not have my trial, but it functions in the same manners. But what is nice with this is you're going to be able to wireframe beyond just, you know, the website, etc. So you can see it in the early stage and the later stage. So if you're going to use those, that works also. You may have to do a screenshot for that, and that is Shift Command 4 on a Mac, and then just click and drag. And you'll hear the little snap, and that means it's going to your desktop. On your PC, it's Alt Print Screen, and you might have to put it into Photoshop and just make a new document and paste it in there. So if you're using one of the online tools, and for these, those are going to be up to you to explore. They're very intuitive, so their designs are quite simplified. So once you explore one, they're all pretty similar. Make sure you screenshot and put those into a folder, and same thing, go ahead, compress it, and then upload that zip file to Moodle. So for this, again, do not worry about colors, do not worry about typefaces, don't worry about the details. Think blocks, space, grid, alignment, and how are you going to get your users to flow through your design. 3 pages and have fun.